Welcome to Express Blog, the podcast. Your place for frank, fearless perspectives that keep you thinking.
The podcast is an extension of our website opinion editorials, which offer an objective look at the politics in our country. We're constantly accused of not knowing what's happening in Guyana because we live abroad. And as I like to say, looking in from the outside gives us a different perch and an alternate view. We keep abreast of Guyana's politics because we are Guyanese, irrespective of where we live, and particularly because we are aware of how we, as expatriates, continue to contribute to the country's economy, and we do so expressly for its improvement. So we have a voice, and we will continue to air it because it's our right, and it will certainly insert an objective alternative into an arena overrun by partisan play. So visit us often to see what's coming next.
This segment is sponsored by Digi Marketing. Digi Marketing, digitizing your vision.
Hi everyone, I'm Varian Barker, and thank you for tuning in to Express Blog, the podcast. Today my esteemed guest is the Samuel Archibald Anthony Hines, familiarly known as Sam Hines, who has had the distinction of serving in the two most senior capacities in Guyana. He served as Prime Minister from October 1992 to March 97, then from December 97 to August 9, 99, then from August 11, 99 to May 2015. He has also served as Executive President from March 6th to December 1997. 1997, yes, December 19, 1997. Prior to this, Mr. Hines headed his division as a chemical engineer at Denver in Linden, and is still fondly recalled as a principal boss who was a stickler for propriety. There's a story that still does the rounds when Sam Hines is mentioned, that he once bought a pound of beef when he lived in Linden, took it home, weighed it, discovered it was 2 ounces short, and took it back with a request for the other 2 ounces or his money back. Anecdote or not, it is testament to how he was perceived, and I'll give him a chance to address that shortly. Why I thought Mr. Hines would be a great guest is the fact that there are similarities to his political ascension and the structure of the current administration, which we're going to look at over the course of our conversation. So, Mr. Hines, welcome. And thank you for agreeing to chatting with me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barker.
Okay, but thank you for having me again, like I said, and I'm going to first address the beef story. Is there any truth to the beef story?
I think the anecdote is a little bit of an anecdote I guess I can't remember it specifically, but I guess we would be upset if people tried to shortchange us, and maybe there was a fair bit of that happening at that time in the 70s or so.
Well, you know what they say in the law, if you can't remember the other side does, then we go in with the other side. But anecdote or not, it does its testament to how people see you, how you perceive.
Yes.
And so the story remains alive and well amongst many, and they recall it with fondness and respect.
Yes.
Just wanted to break the ice with that.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so I'm going to address how you ascended to your political prominence. You came as the prime minister through a coalition with the PPP called the PPPC. I mentioned that because it's a similar alliance to the current government's construct, with you having for a short while supported the WPA, then being part of the Guyanese Action for Reform and Democracy, acronym GUARD, forming what subsequently became PPPC. And correct me if there's anything there that I didn't get right.
It's not correct in details. What had happened is the People's Progressive Party was part of PCD, the Patriotic Coalition for Democracy, and as they had agreed to have one slate for the expected 1990 elections, but they couldn't come to agreement. And then afterwards, Dr. Jagan and the PPP started to look to other arrangements to bring in other people. Now, the problem was that in the PCD, some groups felt that Dr. Jagan and the PPP should more or less stand down. They should not be a majority of seats to the PPP, and Dr. Jagan should not be the leading candidate, the presidential candidate. Now, that was not at all a practical situation when one reflects a bit about it.
Mr. Hanks, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to give like your political platform where you came in on. It's not necessarily for the details, because my conversation with you is not a political one.
The civics, though, the civics were not a political group. They were individuals who the PPP, Dr. Jagan and the PPP approached. So there were a number of individuals who recommended to Dr. Jagan as being not hostile to the PPP and reasonably patriotic and maybe hardworking.
Gotcha. Okay, so having come from that background, what were your challenges, that mix? What were your challenges as Prime Minister, coming from a different political entity, a different ideology, coming from that base, dealing with the PPP, which had an established presence, a strong membership, and a deep ideological leaning, and indisputably a firm race base?
I don't think that there were many big challenges in like ideology. For one thing, I think most Africans growing up, Afro-Guyanese at that time, were, I would say, communalists, in that when you think of the stories of Ananias and Sapphira and the Christian story as it was presented and received, I think most Afro-Guyanese were already socialist inclined or even communalist inclined. So there were no big ideological problems. And the fact that I had grown up in a Canadian mission school in the country, which was 90% the students were Indo-Guyanese, I guess there was no big social kind of hung up.
Got you. Thanks for that. Now I'm going to go to the proposals for constitution reform.
Yes.
Guyana has essentially had two political parties, and they both have pledged constitution reform, particularly in the context of term limits for the president. It's a
Yes.
sentiment that reverberates throughout the electorate, which unfortunately remains polarized to the extent that the call for reform means different things to different races. But there are
Yes.
many who place patriotism ahead of politics and would like to see that reform focused on reducing some of the supreme powers of the president. For example,
Yes.
the strange relationship between Parliament having the power to remove the president for gross misconduct or violations of the Constitution, but that president can prorogue the Parliament if he feels like he shouldn't be removed.
Yes.
It's not
Yes.
uncommon either for a new president to be elected and be served by the previous prime minister. You yourself having served under every PPP president for 22 years or so, which challenges the change many vote for. So, given the partisan fatigue and the rate of the recycling of some of the same politicians many express, what do you think of reform to limit a presidential run to 2 consecutive terms, upon service of which makes you ineligible to run for president or serve as prime minister, as well as reform to limit the performance of prime minister to no more than 2 times under any administration?
I think that constitutional reform comes out of practice and then meets particular problems that are seen at that time. And in our particular case in Guyana, we had significant constitutional reform following the 1997 elections, when one of the calls was that the PPP will always win, and there was danger that the democratic winning could become dictatorial or perceived as dictatorial. So there are a number of things we agreed to. The PPPC, Comrade Janet, agreed to the.
So you agree? You think that we should have reform? You think that
but
right
I'm
now?
saying that we maybe have a lot already that is to be fully digested and put in practice. And unless there is a very, very keen issue, we probably should look to digesting what is already there. And you may
like I
know
mentioned, what I think needs to be redigested then would be the request to have a president run for no more than 2 consecutive terms, and to have a prime minister, and the request to have a prime minister not serve more than 2 times. Do you think that would be a good political move in the country, given the political fatigue people express with the current politicians?
I think that it is not the major problem at this time. Mm-hmm. If I were to say so, and it may sound partisan, but we have the issues on the appointment of the GCOM chairman, which we have contested. We have issues on the appointment of the judges and on the Chancellor and Chief Justice. That, although that might be more a matter of concern at the moment.
Right. Are you taking me off?
Because
go ahead.
There is a concern that President Granger may want to go ahead and appoint his own persons as Chancellor and Chief Justice. Mm-hmm. He hasn't done so yet, but there may be indications. Maybe we are.
So that might be a part of the reform that might be coming up. But let me go off because I don't want to make this a partisan thing. Okay. I'm looking at reform from a country standpoint. How it affects the country and not any specific party.
Particular.
Right.
But
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
But the Constitution usually is reflective both ways. It's more or less you have a series of steps happening, evolving over time. There's a country situation, there may be some amendments to deal with particular problems, and then there may be a new country situation and maybe new amendments. I think our first position is that the amendments made after the 97 elections in 2001, there's still a lot to be digested and put in practice. And unless there is a very, very important, critical issue, one we would prefer to have the current constitution come fully into practice and understanding before other steps are taken.
Well, let me say, because we have a limited amount of time, let me say that there are some who feel that after all these years, there has been a lot of digestion and there is need for change. But this is not about the Constitution only. Like I said, my focus is on how it affects everybody in Guyana. So I'm going to go to the next issue that has been raised. There's a view that presidents tend to be egregious in some actions when they're in office because the Constitution dictates that they cannot be tried or held liable during their tenure, during or after their tenure. Do you think that reform should be more explicit on what could be actionable against the president, both in and out of office? And just, I mean, I'm not trying to limit you, but could you contain your answer to that question?
Yes, I would say yes. I can imagine things that the president might do that one might want to say, if these sorts of things are done, he should be answerable for it, maybe even whilst in office or after that. But this is a general position. This is a general position.
Good, and it's a general position I'm looking for. And I'm just asking again because you have served in the position of both PM and President. And so I'm trying to bring this into context, not to make it a party issue, but a country issue, because these are the pertinent ills.
But let me say, there are many good things that may need to be done.
Yes.
But one always has to look also at sequencing and prioritization. I would say that is not an urgent thing. I would say that we should look more now to ways of developing trust and ways of agreeing on how things should be done. Even the current constitution should be done.
Right.
Because if not, all we would do is we will write some additional things, and as usual, when the time comes up, every lawyer will interpret it differently, and we may be no further along.
And every party will have their own problem with it. I got you.
Yes, yes.
Well, that's truly, go ahead, sir, go ahead.
So I think that one needs to develop more trust, let the current constitution run as and develop a common understanding and trust in it, and then there will be a better basis for further amendments or refinements.
Sounds fair to me. That's definitely some information worth mulling over. With our guest, the Honorable Mr. Sam Hines, who has graciously decided to come on and chat with us today. We're going to take a sponsor break now, and we'll be back in a moment. You're listening to XPRESS Blog, the podcast. Keep listening.
Chemistry is everywhere around you. It's in the food you eat, the water you drink, medicines, air, you name it. Chemistry helps you understand the world around you. Why do leaves change color in the fall? Why are plants green? How is cheese made? What is in soap and how does it clean? These are all questions answered by chemistry. So, study chemistry today. Why? Because chemistry matters. This message was brought to you by Dr. K.F. Smith, chemist. Chemistry matters.
Thank you for sticking with us. We're back with our guest, Honorable Sam Hines, former President and Prime Minister of Guyana, who's been discussing some of the country's issues with us. So, Mr. Hines, recently there's been some furor by residents of Bel Air Park over the mayor and town clerk's proposal to sell or lease a playground in their neighborhood in contravention of the covenant and deeds of these open spaces. A court has ruled against the mayor and town clerk, against their
Yes.
proposed encroachment on that space. But shockingly, MNTC have filed an appeal. This shows a striking level of either ignorance of the laws, the rules and regulations that they should have command of, or flagrant disregard for order. How do you think this happened, that a body elected to uphold law and order just steps on
Yes.
it? And this is not unique to this administration, because we're all still disturbed by the Suba Hammy Green wars from not so long ago. What's happening in Guyana? What's happening with the fabric of our governmental propriety, you think?
Well, my own view is a bit different. Maybe I have, in my days in school, secondary school, I learned history, and you learn about how maybe even England came along. You may have heard of the Battle of the Roses, the County of York and Lancashire over some 60 years. So people have to learn how to live in society and how to accept institutions. And then at times of revolution, people challenge and overthrow institutions. So this is part of living. Living is not a cocktail party. It's a contentious story that's going on all the time. Contradictions and different views are always arising. In this particular case, the mayor and town council, I think, have the right to appeal, and they can go to appeal, and chances are the appeal court will uphold the position of the lower court. Chances are. And then maybe in our particular case, they may even want to go to the CCJ. So, and then eventually they would hopefully accept and abide by the position that is taken. But I would say our country has a lot to learn. Our people have a lot to learn. It's part of the process. But let me say that there used to be quite a lot of charges made that our administration was against the mayors of the council, but we are now seeing there are differences in position. There are differences from central government views and the mayors of the council, and there's differences even from the citizens of the town. So, but it's part of learning and growing up. For example, let me tell you another one. When I first went to the States and I heard about people are responsible for cleaning the snow off the pavement around their yard,
Walk in front of the house.
lot, I thought that was most ridiculous. But it was an agreement. It was a position taken at some time. It's accepted, and it's the way it is. But for me, coming up from Guyana, it seems to be most awful, because why should I be responsible for the public road, public pavement in front of my...
Well, let me answer a bit for you on that. One of the reasons is you pay a much lower rate of taxes if you clean that piece yourself, rather than have the state or the municipality pay for it.
Yes, and I understood that. I understood that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but I just wanted
coming
to
from one tradition, coming from one tradition, it appeared incongruous at first.
Yes.
But I understood it, and so I could accept it if I lived in the state in North America at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, thanks for that answer. And I should mention at this point, too, I've learned that residents in Sobriamville have a similar problem with Mays schools and their residential area where they live and this school and parking, etc. I've had lots of complaints, and I'm told that they've complained to the mayor and town council, and so far they've been largely ignored. And I'm just putting that out there for those who are listening. But let's move on. There's a concern about parking meters and its impact, immediate and long term, on the economy.
Yes.
With the reactivation of the contract, the current contract, City Hall has said that they will be better off with the 80-20 in favor of vendor split, the vendor being Smart City Solutions, rather than a 50-50 split. since it will give the company a chance to inflate for expenses, and that it will actually boil down to a 30-20 split when everything is factored in. My thing is, my question to you is that monetizing parking spaces is good and should come after intent feasibility studies. It would be good to show the public a progression of anticipated earnings, like a starting point.
Yes.
So the initial investment of smart city solutions would be good and good to know, but we need to know how long it would take smart city to recoup that investment, even with the equipment repairs and exigencies factored in. The initial investment, I'm told, was $10 million US. So given the area, the target areas of these meters and the potential number of parkings, cars parking, with even the adjusted payment per hour, it would be interesting to see, with the risk and uncertainty factored in, how long it would take to generate $10 million US, or any figure for that matter, so we can track how much more than initial investment this company would make.
Yes.
After by the end of their 20-year contract.
Yes. I think what you're calling for is an open book arrangement.
Yes,
so
because
that all the pieces can be known. Yes, yes.
No, because what I was going to say is that I know right now we're focusing on the lowering of the per hour and per day rates.
Yes.
We're not hearing that overall investment cost and how that will impact our economy. Your thoughts?
Yes, my thought is that we should have an open book situation for any such sort of arrangement. It should be open book, and one should be it should be efficient and effective operation. It should be suitable to the context of Guyana, and it should probably come under the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, for changes in rates and so on, just like I think a number of other things under the PUC. Those would be my thoughts about it. The trouble with many of these things is that you're often bringing an American system into the Guyana situation where rates of pay and GDP and so on levels are quite far apart. And so even though an American system might be incongruous in a Guyana situation, and indeed, this proposal was put to us maybe since 1993-94, which we thought was not suitable for Guyana at that time. In particular, there was many fewer cars and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I would say that Guyana is probably getting to a point where the question has to be addressed about paying for parking on the streets, but then maybe we should step back and go back to an invitation and a competitive open system. And also we should promote parking in many of the open lots. Like in Port of Spain, at least some years ago when I visited, nearly every lot that didn't have a building on it had parking off the road, paid parking off the road. And that has started up in Guyana. We have a number of instances now developing of paid parking off the road. And I presume in time, and we have a building in Perica where someone has made a flat roof, and you can park above on the flat roof. Above the, I think, stores and buildings below, things below. So the society is moving along, and it will get to the point where you will have some paid parking on the streets. But things have to be done. Maybe we need to start over and have an invited, competitive system. We need to have open book systems so everyone could look into it and be assured that the rates of return are unreasonable, and that sort of thing.
Thanks. Thanks very much for that, Mr. Hines. We're going to take another break for our sponsors, and we will be back in a moment. You're listening to XPRESS Blog, the podcast. Keep listening.
This segment is sponsored by DigiEye Marketing. DigiEye Marketing, digitizing your vision.
Nurse timers are here to help you take your medicine safely and accurately. With this miracle timer, simply select the color that corresponds with your dosing interval. After taking your first dose of the day, plug in the device. A tone will sound and the light will flash red. Place the medicine into the compartment to change the light to green. Your medicine will give alerts for your next dosing time. When it sounds, simply take your dose and replace the medicine. The insert is included for smaller bottles, and the adapter is for other sizes and shapes. For most individuals, a single device can be used as a reminder for many medicines. Easy. The POC device is a mobile timer that works on the same principle. Attach the timer to your medicine container and take your first dose of the day and start the device. The unit will give a tone and light up. Press the button to turn off the alert to set your next dosing time automatically. When it's time, the unit will make a tone and light up. Take your dose of medicine and silence the alert.
Stay tuned to XPRESS Blog, the podcast. Your place for frank, fearless perspectives that keep you thinking.
Well, we're back. I'm Varian Barker, and thanks for hanging in with me and my guest, the Sam Hines of Guyana. Sir, I'm going to take you now to our nation's parliament. Like every other one, this represents the nation's highest legislature and is headed by the country's president along with 65 of its lawmakers. By function, therefore, it should be the hallmark of decorum, which extends the manner of speaking, dress, and conduct. Embarrassingly, Parliament has become a brawling ground, with dissenting parties walking out, not walking in, or disrupting the nation's highest officer, the president. We have children for whom we're setting an example, in whose hands we hope to place the reins of Parliament one day. The disrespect of our president by heckling is reprehensible at best, as is the organized walkout from Parliament. Inherent in different political ideologies is difference, and I'm positing that that difference can be navigated with passion, but with class. Your thoughts?
Yes, my thoughts is that, again, one maybe has to look at history. You know, there's the story that the two sides in the Westminster Parliament are set at a distance so that two swords, if a representative on each side were to pull his sword, then maybe the swords would just touch, the tips would just touch, but they couldn't get going on each other. Mm-hmm. What I mean is that Parliament, to some extent, is an avoidance of even worse things outside of Parliament.
It has become extremely acrimonious. The atmosphere in there is shamefully acrimonious.
And I will come to that, but I would say that parliaments are, first of all, a replacement of maybe even worse things happening on the outside. We agree to talk and maybe even abuse each other by mouth rather than hack each other with swords in the parliament. So to some extent, even as we see in some other parliaments in India, I think, South Korea, somewhere, they even have fights and so on. So to some extent, if we look at history, if we look at the history of these things, it is maybe better, still a little bit better than the alternative when we look at history. So that's one part. Secondly, I do
Before you go, share that alternative with us. Are you talking about swords drawn and duking it out in front of the
story? You know, there's a very common story told that the two sides in the British Parliament were set at a distance that people couldn't touch, the people on the two sides couldn't touch each other with their swords, or their swords would just touch in the middle. So it was set at a distance so they couldn't hack each other in Parliament with their swords.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows, I say that to say that, you know, Parliament would at times be very contentious. I think there's a story in the English Parliament a long time ago, yes, of some people sitting on the chest of the Speaker, so he couldn't leave Parliament, because the story is once the Speaker leaves Parliament, no more business in Parliament. So he was detained if somebody sat on his chest. But I say that to give a certain broad context of what can happen in Parliament and what Parliament seeks to serve. Now, on the other end, our Parliament has been extremely acrimonious, this last one, because of where we ended up. I think going back to the 2011 elections, when no one won an absolute majority, we won 30, and the other two parties then knocked together as one party, 131. And according to the Constitution, our leader became president, and we formed the government. So that created a great frustration in the two opposing parties for all of the 2011 to 2015 period. And then that bitterness went into the 2015 elections.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is all the allegations, and then the forensic audits about stealing of hundreds of billions of dollars and things like that, which now are seen to have been maybe nothing criminal. It was always, or mostly it has been, differences in opinion and approach. I recall that particularly what we did to continue and to complete Marriott. I know that members on the other side, they were very, very upset about it. Very, very upset. I think they wanted Marriott to be left standing here as a monument and so on. But we did what we could do within the law to get it done. And they were very upset, and of course they saw that as being criminal and so on. But now, after 3 years, or nearly getting to 3 years, all of those allegations of corruption are largely gone by the wayside. So there was a degree of bitterness. I know personally too, I was upset there's an inauguration speech, and I think a day or two later our president said that nothing was done for the hinterland. And I wrote something that said, when did we start having minibus running to Lesser? When did we start having minibus running to Madhya? I think that people, they didn't understand the costs and what was involved in getting things done. And that led to a very acrimonious situation, which we still have to find a way out of. Definitely we're stuck.
Because it all comes down, indeed, it all comes down to party, it all comes down to ideology. Sadly, it comes down largely on race. And I just want to mention here, I know you said, you stressed this last one, this parliament, but I do think the parliaments before this one were equally as contentious. Some might argue even more. No blame on them, and I'm really not getting into the interview, but I just want to say, I know that's your view, but there are others who view,
that's my view,
have an opposing view.
Yeah.
And, and speaking of the Marriott, now that you've mentioned it, I wish I can get to speak to Mr. Brasington about that. I understand people's concern about the Marriott, And I have had some opinions about it myself, and I know that I'm not alone. So I think, like the way I'm speaking to you today, and you're coming from the other side of the political aisle. I'm not on any side, but you're coming from the, when I say the other side, I mean the opposition.
Yes, I would acknowledge that
yes.
I am from the other side.
Right, I mean the opposition. I didn't mean, you know, I ain't trying to make it sound alien.
Yes.
But
yes.
It's always good to talk. It's really good to talk.
Yes.
And I think views should really be out there, and people should not be struck down because of their political affiliation.
Well,
because everybody constitutionally has a right to pick their party. They have that right.
I think Mr. Trump and Mr. Kim Il-sung are about to talk in May.
That is
and
so,
2-3 months ago, they were about to throw bombs on each other.
That is so. But then again, comparing Trump as a political heavyweight, there's really no comparison. But I don't want to go there in this interview. Please don't twist my arm. So, but I get what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying. And
may I make another comment here?
Absolutely. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Yes. It is interesting that last week, Mr. Badal, who owns the Pegasus, has announced that he is extending it, putting in some more than doubling it up and so on, and having special apartments and offices and so on. Mm-hmm. And who is going to be building his place, his new place? The Chinese team that is here in Guyana now, doing some other work. And actually, Marriott was built. Yeah?
I said that's breaking news for me.
Yes, it came out on last week, if you check the papers about 2-3 days ago. And Marriott was built by a Chinese group, I think Shanghai Corporation, but registered in Trinidad. And some of the work was subletted even in Trinidad. The foundation work was done by a team, local Trinidad team that includes Guyanese. Mm-hmm. And then the work, all the suppliers, pre-mixed concrete and blocks were supplied locally by a local contractor. So, and there were lots and lots, if we go back and look at all the complaints that were said then. But now we have Mr. Badal and his Pegasus is going to use a Chinese team that is here too. Yeah. So my main feeling I get is that Guyanese have a lot to learn and are learning, and maybe after having learned, maybe the positions would be different. I think the assumptions we had when we became independent, the bad periods we had there in 70s and 80s, people focused very narrowly on just their own living and the broader knowledge and awareness of how things work in the world is maybe not there as to the extent as in other places. So I'm not as upset as maybe it might be expected on these things, but it definitely costs us. It costs us in cohesion and in getting on with things.
Absolutely.
But it's learning.
Absolutely. Well, you know, you say it's learning. I'm a little disenchanted that we're still learning. And I know learning is an ongoing process, but we seem to be learning from the ABC level now. And there are a lot of things that can be factored in, a lot of things that can be attributed to the fact that we're still at little ABC level. I have my thoughts, I have my feelings, I have my opinions like everybody else, but I am conducting an interview and I need to extract myself from it. But you can tell, I'm sure, that I do have political positions.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like everybody should, and anybody who says that they don't have ain't telling you the truth.
They're deceiving themselves.
Yeah,
Yes,
and they're
I would agree
deceiving
with that.
themselves because everything is politics. Everything is politics. Irrespective of how you look at things, everything is politics. But you can have the
That is
last
very
word
true.
because we're getting ready to wrap this up. You can have the last word.
Okay.
Anything else you want to tell us, sir? Any
I would
kind of advice to the current administration, advice to people who are looking for local government elections, advice to people who are still thinking that there is more to be done. Your floor. Go ahead.
yes, my thoughts is that I think that the challenge of coming together as one people has been grossly underestimated, and also the challenge in developing our country materially has also been grossly underestimated. I think in coming independence, we more or less felt like, with a wave of a hand, we may become like America or like England. But again, having read the histories of those countries and see how they came along, maybe I would like to say more realistic about our expectations. Bringing people together, you see, our different people, our 6 peoples, we were never together. And when we talked about a broken country or so on, it gives people the impression that we were together at one time. We weren't. Or it gives people the impression that it's very easy for our 6 peoples to come together. It isn't. We feel differently on many, many things. The way we make jokes, the way we celebrate, all those things are different. My view is, though, that we have been closing the gap over my lifetime. It's closer, and I'm hoping that in time it will get closer still, and that even though we are in a very acrimonious period now, that it would pass somehow, and we would get closer. Also, materially, to build this country materially. Also, the question of people compare us with Trinidad and Barbados, but population density, number of persons in a square mile, and so on, is a very important measure of what's possible. And if Guyana were to have the same population density as Trinidad or Barbados, there are 2 ways, 2 extreme ways. One, you need something to 100 million people, just like in England, with the same size in England. Or you need to down to 1,000 square miles. Trinidad, Barbados, I think, is 166. Imagine if everything in Guyana was within a couple hundred square miles. The longest road would be 20 miles. The longest electric line would be 20 miles. The longest pipeline would be 20 miles. You can just imagine putting how much more money you could put in per mile and how much better the things would be. So those are things that I would say that maybe we have to think more about going into the future. The constraints, geographic and demographic population constraints that we live in, which put limits on us, and also the fact of the differences. We're coming from different positions. We're closing gaps. We're not a splintered society. We're a society where people have been coming together, where we've made a lot of progress, but where there is still distances still to be closed. And I think if we understood that attitude, it would go easier.
And I think, too, because of the 6 races, we have to not be pretensive and acknowledge that anthropological differences run deep. That's in our DNA, our individual DNAs, so that every race will still have that feeling, that difference. So that when we talk about coming together, we have to think, when we put it on the political stage, we have to think that every race has its own DNA, its own feeling, its own thinking. Coming together is more than just saying we all have the same motto or we can all go to the same school. The government, when they devise policies, they must be respectful of those differences. We have to accept that there are differences. There's a lot of feelings too about deliberate separation. And these are the things I think will assist with the crossover. But you are forcing me to insert myself into the conversation, sir. No, I don't want to do that. Please don't do that. Because then I would be considered to not be objective. And I am objective, trust me.
There's always objectivity and subjectivity, you know, and the position might be that there's nothing objective, it's all subjective, it's a matter of context and so on. But just to say one thing before I go, and that is that our social life is tied up very much with race groups and so on, but it is not in the genes. And so if you take a Chinese guy and grow him up in a black community, you'll probably find that is the way he lives. If you take a black guy and grow him up Chinese, you'll find that that is the way he would live. It is learned, but it is learned because the learning goes from generation to generation. It has the appearance of being in the genes. A lot of it has the appearance of being in the genes, but a lot of it is learned from the day you grow up. Like how I at first couldn't accept the idea that someone had to clean the pavement, was responsible for cleaning the pavement outside their house, because I grew up in a case where that's public situation, that's done by the public, it's not my responsibility.
But getting back to that community you just mentioned, we got 6 races living in essentially the same community. But each race still has its own mores. It still has its way it conducts its
That's true.
ethnicity. It's all about culture, and culture is rooted in anthropology. That's what I'm saying. So regardless, I mean, you could be living, I could live next to an Indian man across. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, to my left was a Hindu, across the street was the Muslim, next to us was some Christians, and trust me, when you had Eid, I used to be eating whatever coming from across the street. To the left of us, whenever they had whatever Pagwa, whatever, when they got married, the 3-day marriage, we were all a part of it for the food. I mean, we didn't understand the whole culture, but the point I'm making is that after growing up, I still know who I am. I know who I am. They know who they are, and we still have these differences. So it's more than just putting a Chinese in a black group.
I may differ with you on another occasion. I think that it is not in the genes, but you are in a position of tensions and pullings, and over time you would see. The time might be a couple of generations. Well, you may see a merger, a fusion, and so on. If you look at history, you know, there's the short term, there's the 1 generation, there's 10 generation things that happen. If you look in England, there's still issues between the Scots and the English, even though we may read of them historically for over 2,000-year period, but there's still differences, lots of things together and so on. So it's very interesting subject. I don't think, though, that a lot of the social things are not in the genes. They are learned, but they behave very much like if they are in the genes, but they are not in the genes, and it's very difficult to change them unless you put the person in a new situation. For example, many people complain that Guyanese here at home arrive at parties and events half an hour after the scheduled time, but the day after they land in America, they know they got to get to work for 8 o'clock. They get to work at least for 8 o'clock or a couple of minutes to 8, whether it rains or it snows. But they are put into a different situation where all the pressures from around them, all the behaviors, push them in that direction. When they're home, they push differently. So there's lots of things like that, and my hope is that we would get back to closing the gaps between us, particularly if we can get on to some large jobs that challenge us all, and we all accept that it's good for us. I had hoped that Amila building a hydropower station, which was coming from the 73 Burnham time, would have fitted that bill. But in the particular circumstances of 2011, it probably could not have been accepted by the other side. So,
and there were quite a few other things. There were a lot of things in that too that people didn't accept because there was a lot of concern about the accounting, etc. for that. But again, I'm not going to allow you to push me where I don't want to go. So, Mr. Hines, I am going to say thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say?
Thank you very much.
Anything else you want to say? I'm sorry.
No, I would say let's keep.
Yes, I would love to have you back. I would love to have you back. I thank you today for chatting with me. We've covered some pressing issues that need input from all points of the political spectrum. We're grateful that you agreed to share your thoughts with us on this forum. And you are more than welcome to come back. If I don't call you, please call me. And I have also issued an invitation to several members of your of your party, of your side of the aisle. I would love to speak to. As I've said before, this is not a political forum in the sense that blame is being assigned, or I'm saying you. I don't do that, and we don't do that here. I've approached this conversation with you totally from country, because I feel at the end of the day we're all patriots. Having said that, I thank you for coming on. I am so humbled by your presence. I'm glad that you came. And we thank you out there for tuning in to Express Blog, the podcast, and hope to see you back as we continue to address the political concerns of many in Guyana. We encourage you to follow Express Blog on Facebook, on Twitter, and visit our website at expressblog.com. Once again, thank you for stopping by. And Mr. Hines, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.